Good evening, everyone, and welcome into Sports Hub STL and the City Hub Postgame, of course. City Hub Postgame show brought to you by Hot Shots, St. Louis home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com and by DraftKings. The crown is yours. We got a lot to talk about on this show today, Will, because it's another loss for City SC. They drop points in their eighth straight, and they lose to San Diego 2-1. An extremely disappointing game for this one. Your opening thoughts, Will?
That's just a tragic one. I mean, you can't give up those two goals. There's no way around that. You dominate for a lot of the match. The first half was probably one of the best attacking halves we've seen all season. I don't really count Galaxy because they suck. They just had a touchdown scored on them earlier this evening. They're terrible. And they also gave St. Louis most of their goals for free in that match, even though it was a 3-goal half they were given, or a 3-goal match, whatever. I think that was the best first half. That first half tonight was one of the best we've seen in terms of attack. Defense was fine. That San Diego didn't really get many opportunities with the ball because St. Louis was managing the match so well. To do that, not score, it's not the end of the world when you're at home to not score in that first half. But what you cannot do is let off the gas at all in the second half. And that's exactly what St. Louis did. And that's exactly why I'm extremely pissed off about that match, because you can't let that happen. You can't let that happen.
Yeah, it's hard not to be frustrated with that match again. It's a complete inverse of Seattle, but it's pretty much the same exact disappointing end, which is Seattle, you play 30 good minutes and then 70 crap minutes, and you lose big. Tonight, you played 70 good minutes, 30 bad minutes, and we saw what the result was. Just extremely disappointing. Dubes Val jumps into the chat. Please jump into the chat, by the way, and if you're watching, make sure you like and subscribe to Sports Hub STL so you get notified when we go live for any and all of our shows. Dubes Val, send Yaro to Mars. I have a feeling that's a common thought process after tonight's game.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Josh Yaro, he didn't really do anything that upset me in the first half. Usually this is a 2 or 3 times a half deal with Josh Yaro. In the first half, I thought he was fine. Same with Kyle Hebert. In fact, Kyle Hebert didn't really do anything tonight that upset me, which was kind of surprising.
Got a goal.
But Josh Yaro, yeah, and he scored, which is great. Awesome. Shout out Kyle Hebert. But Josh Yaro, absolutely folded, in a couple of key moments in a tie match, and that just can't happen. Obviously, the second goal is directly on Yaro. And the first one, there were obviously implications there too. They're both very preventable goals. So I understand the frustration with Josh Yaro. Obviously, everyone knows that he's a locker room guy. He's very good in the locker room. He does a lot in the community. You got to love Josh Yaro as a human being. But in terms of his performance when it mattered in the second half tonight, very, very, very subpar.
Yeah, and we're going to get into this. Alex Boyer on the chat jumps in and kind of prefaces what my point was going to be. I understand the availability issues, but we can't roll out the same players in the same formations and expect different results. We are quickly losing playoff possibilities. I want to hit this on 2 things because the availability issues definitely rear their head. The fact that you have to play the same 3 or 4-man defense if you want to loop in Horn, but essentially Horn, Hebert, Yaro, and Baumgartel have played almost every minute they've been available. Since Horn's returned, he's played a lot of minutes. That's why he had to come out late in the second half today. Hebert, Yaro, and Baumgartel have played every minute pretty much that the center backs have needed to play over the last 6 matches. And obviously Hebert's second on the team in total minutes played. And so I'm not surprised. I called it. I had a feeling we were going to see a late goal from San Diego because this defensive 3 was huffing and puffing, and they just couldn't keep it going for another 90 minutes the entire time. And what happens? Long ball over the top, and Dreyer's able to just kind of work Yaro for a goal there. That one was disappointing for the second one. The first one, we'll get to more of the issues with the first one as I answer the second part from Alex Boyer, which was I actually had some positivity from Olaf today because it was the same players, but it wasn't the same formation, and we were not getting the same results. He switched out he switched 4 players in different positions than where they were last week, or where 3 of them were the previous weeks. Horn went from left center back to left wing back. Kyle Hebert went from right wing back to right center back, and Wallum went from wing back to center midi, which then kicked Watts out from center midi to right wing back. So they actually did put a lot of changes into the same group of players, and it actually completely opened things up in the first half. That's one of the few times where I'm not criticizing the formation or the role for the first half, because I was heavily critical of it pregame, Will. I couldn't believe that he was, to Alex Boyer's point, rolling out the same players. But to their credit, they changed the formation, they changed the positioning, and they got different results. Then the second half happened.
Yeah, I completely agree. And to be honest with you, I see this match as not a coaching match at all. This is a complete player execution match. Listen, I liked the higher press. Obviously, if you want to say that the players not maintaining the higher press in the second half is on the coaching staff, then we can have that conversation.
Not even that.
To me, I liked the changes that were made in the tactics and, the personnel being kind of moved around. I thought that all the substitutions made sense. I think maybe you could see Celio Pompeo come in significantly sooner, because obviously he had a lot of impact on that match. The second he jumped in, he was only in there for 7 minutes plus like 6 in stoppage time. So he didn't have a lot of time to make a difference. But even in that short time, he directly caused the goal that Kyle Hebert scored by making like a 50-yard dribble with the ball, earning a foul. And then that results in the set piece goal for Kyle Hebert there. So I would have loved to see him sooner. But other than that, I was decently happy with the decisions that Mellberg made throughout this match. For me, this is just a large issue that we're seeing, over and over again, which is becoming really infuriating, which is that St. Louis City SC cannot, infuriating, that like right on cue. St. Louis City SC continue to find ways to miss the net in the biggest moment of the match every single time. When it's 0-0 or it's 1-1, St. Louis City SC consistently generate a very key opportunity and manage to miss. In this case, it was XiaoClaus. He does everything right that you're supposed to do in heading the ball. He gets over it, heads down, but he's just a little too far down, and it hits the ground so hard that it ends up bouncing over the bar, which is almost impressive. That's very difficult to do, by the way. So that was very unfortunate, and that just can't happen. It's got to go in the back of the net. So that sucks, especially for Klaus, who had a goal against Union Omaha and also had a really great match, I would say, in the time that he was on the pitch tonight. I was very happy with Klaus's play. I think he did great as the holdup. I think he created a lot of space and opportunity. But that header's got to go in. And that's the key moment. After that, what happens? St. Louis, the pressure's boiling. All of a sudden, they're like, man, we got to score. We got to score. They get a little bit too caught up high. The press slows down a little bit. The legs are a little tired. One mistake is made, and a defensive breakdown happens. St. Louis concede, and then it's all over. So it's that big moment that's just completely frustrating this team over and over.
I'm going to disagree with you on a couple of those points. One, I think getting to a point where you start complaining about or nitpicking finishing, I think it's a mistake. Finishing will come and go. You will never sustain finishing across a long arc. You will barely sustain finishing across a short arc. So did they create enough? Did they create more opportunities than we've seen them create in previous games? Yes. So fine. Let's throw out the offense for now. Let's talk about the coaching mistake. And I think there was a very large coaching mistake. And it might not necessarily be tonight, but Aaron Ed is pointing out a quote from Olaf Mellberg. All 3 subs were because players were tired. Okay. Yeah. This is what I was complaining about on Wednesday night. And it might have seemed misplaced because it didn't affect Wednesday. But I had a feeling something was going to happen tonight. And Klaus played and Horn played. And those were 2 of the guys that I kind of called out their minutes on Wednesday, because Horn was returning, played 22 minutes on Saturday against Seattle, plays 45 minutes against Omaha. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're going to play a guy who just came back over 100 minutes in 1 week of time. And they did, but they couldn't push him to 120, 130 minutes. So Horn had to come out. Klaus, same way. Only played 15 on Wednesday, but he plays 15 on Wednesday and he's going to come out 15 minutes early tonight. Is he playing the 15 tonight if he's not playing the 15 on Wednesday? Why is he playing the 15 on Wednesday then? Ostrak, I'm a little bit more, he's a little bit, he's not 90 healthy, which is, I pointed out earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday, it was yesterday after Olaf said at the presser that Ostrak has been coming out because Ostrak isn't 90 minutes healthy. Why does Ostrak keep starting if he's not 90 minutes healthy? And maybe it's because they feel it's the best decision and it was working the first half. But Ostrek is not 90 minutes healthy, and that was a problem. And so part of that is his mismanagement on Wednesday. Now let's go to the mismanagement that I saw today from him, and that was, I think the subs were a bad move when he called them. And that's because if you look at the first goal, and I got so lucky tonight, Will. This is going to make the show because of how lucky I got tonight. I took a photo of...
Oh, I saw that. This is the one you posted? Yeah, yes. That was funny as hell.
I took a photo of the first goal, but I took it right before the first goal happens. So you can see right now, on this picture right now, if you see the ball right in the middle, right above where Yaro is, that ball is in the air. And the ball that's in the air right there, that is the ball that Jandé Silva will lose in the midfield, and that will turn into the first goal from San Diego. This is the first goal. And you see what I've circled there is, look at that chasm.
A massive gap.
From Wallum to Jandé Silva. Wallum is there, the left side of the circle on the edge. Jandé Silva is at the bottom right side of the circle. Look at that chasm of nothing in the midfield. And that's because they made the switch of putting in offensive players for midfielders, and boom. Right there, that is an exposed midfield. And Conrad Wallum pointed out that when they made the switch, his job was to play even deeper than he was. He's doing his job. Conrad Wallum is right there. He's dropped back deep, right there where he's supposed to be in that deep lying defensive midi role. But there are no other midfielders on the field except for Marcel Hartle, who after the switch has been pushed up into attacker, and bam, they're exposed for the first goal. That is unequivocally, in my opinion. Yes, you can blame Jandé Silva for not being in a better defensive position, but it is a coaching mistake to expect Jandé Silva to be in a better defensive position when he's new on the team and he's not a defensive player in the first place. Offensive players who are new to a system are going to pick up on the offensive sides first and maybe the defensive sides second. I thought it was a mistake to lose one of the benefits they had, and like I said earlier, one of the big benefits they had, the same 11, but how did they change how they played them? Well, instead of playing the 3-4-3, where Hartle or Wallum are getting up into the attacking three alongside Klaus and Teuscher, they deployed more like a base 3-5-2, which meant that they almost always had numbers in the midfield with Wallum, Ostrek, and Hartle. As soon as you make the switch, you abdicate having numbers in the midfield, and what's the goal you give up? No numbers in the midfield. I think that was a mistake by Olaf and Co. in the second half today.
I think that's a really good analysis, and I think I agree with you there. I mean, it's an obvious. I mean, the screenshot really tells that entire story. And in my opinion, that wasn't the only time we saw that. I think as legs got tired and things got a little desperate near the end of that match, the midfield was wide open numerous times. And that's actually, ironically, almost what led to Celio Pompeu being able to drive down the left-hand side for free because everything was so
7 shots
off of there.
7 shots from San Diego. So they had, I'm looking at double. So they in the second half, San Diego had 14 shots. Half of those shots came after City made their 3 subs. And also, that's bad. And just overall, while City did create some chances overall, 16 total shots, 3 big chances to lead the game in both those categories. I think it is interesting that of the 1.61 expected goals for City in this game, 1.1 of them came in 1.5 seconds. And that was...
Yeah, it was Wallum and Hebert.
0.5 from Wallum's off the bar and 0.61 from Hebert on the goal. So much of the XG comes from 1.5 seconds. The other 90 minutes produces 0.5 XG, despite the fact that the other 90 minutes produces 2 big chances and 14 other shots. And so that kind of points to, despite the fact that they actually had more touches in San Diego's penalty box today, and it was one of the highest count they've had the entire season, and they did a solid job with 9 shots in the box, they still didn't force a high level of difficulty for them to stop those shots today.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a really, really, really eye-opening stat, and it matches exactly what you saw on the pitch tonight. I mean, at the end of the day, you're watching Akil Watts get in on the outside, Teuscher get in on the outside. You have Klaus's header, and none of these are really. They're not going to be XG producers. You know, it takes a miracle to see one of those go in. It takes a very clinical moment by a clinical offensive player to do that. And St. Louis hasn't been really getting those kinds of moments from anybody on the pitch. So you can't, expect those to be high XG producers. So that is a very eye-opening stat.
Yeah, it's disappointing. You're creating some chances, but and honestly, this is the issue with tonight is that some of the good things are directly connected to some of the bad things, which is there's no doubt this was one of the better games I thought between the combination of Cedric Teuscher and XiaoClaus. XiaoClaus was dangerous. He gets 5, but he had 5 touches in the box at half. Out of the first 13 touches in the City's box, Klaus had 5 of them. City got 11 more touches in the box. Klaus got 0 of those. So, and part of that's because he wasn't there for the last 15 minutes, but he didn't get any in those middle 20 minutes from about 45 to 65. And that's disappointing considering he had such good positioning. He was dangerous. Cedric Teuscher kept getting the ball centrally, high up in positions where he could connect with Klaus, but they didn't pull the trigger enough. And Olaf mentioned that they had a lot of chances where the San Diego backline was on their heels. And Teuscher and Klaus had the ball going at them, and they weren't able to get a decisive, good chance from them. And that's disappointing because there's been so few opportunities and so few games where you can run through the tape and see City consistently having moments where a 10 or a 9 has the ball with another guy ahead of him pressing the back line. And we saw that 7-8 times in the first 60 minutes from Seti and Klaus today. Those are the kind of moments that breed easy goals across the length of a season. They created, the initial moment, but they didn't have the killer moment. And that is disappointing because if they would have just had another couple chances from Seti to Klaus, maybe this is 1-0 early for City in a completely different game.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I think if City scored the first goal in numerous of their recent matches, they would have had a lot more wins because the first goal has been that pivotal for the St. Louis side this entire season. I mean, you've watched the dam break in the wrong direction every single time City concede the first goal. And I don't think that's just like an obvious, that's a soccer stat. Of course, the team who concedes first is going to lose the game. Obviously, that's going to happen some of the time. But with some teams, it's more dramatic and more pivotal. I can't say the word pivotal for some reason than others.
If they're up 1-0, they don't make a bunch of offensive subs and don't give up the midfield and don't give up that first goal. And that's why this is one of the first games that I'm really like, this is on the coaching staff for making a bad decision, for not putting not putting their players in the best position to succeed. And that's something they got to look in the mirror about going forward, because this is really the first time. I know fans have had dozens of times, for them, for that reasoning. This is, for me, is really the first time. And that's worrisome. And as you ponder that thought, Will, I'm going to tell everybody about our good friends over at DraftKings because, of course, DraftKings, the crown is yours, one of our wonderful sponsors here on our post-game shows. It's soccer season, but it's also baseball season officially underway, and it's time to step into the plate with DraftKings Pick 6. Think of DraftKings as a fastball right down the middle, a meatball that you can slam away and get a big win. The easiest way to play for cash and take a shot at a big win. You select 2 or more players and choose if they'll have more or less of a stat. Pick 6 is available in most states, including California, Texas, Georgia, Missouri, and more. Cash in your baseball knowledge. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly on just a $5 entry. Got Miles Michaelis going for the Cardinals tomorrow. I think that's a pretty good one to put in your Pick 6. I'm not saying you should go with him having a really good game on your Pick 6, but maybe that's the one you put in on your Pick 6. Maybe you're feeling like I am that he might struggle a little bit. That's fine. We're going to roll with Miles Michaelis. We're going to go lower on his strikeout count. We're going to go higher on Mackenzie Gore because I just don't like lefties when they face the St. Louis Cardinals. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. 1 per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
Will, as we continue here on the City Hub postgame presented by Hot Shots and DraftKings, I'm getting some comments from the Twitter tweets that I wanted to bring in. Abo says, process doesn't matter at this point. The league table is getting out of hand. San Diego, based on their trajectory, is the kind of team that you have to get wins against to climb out. It's a sad state. And Jovic awaits on Wednesday.
I mean, San Diego is a really good team. They've been doing great in MLS. So it's not like, you're playing against Houston that's sitting one of the only two teams in the entire conference sitting below St. Louis right now. But I do agree. I still do agree, by the way, that this is a match you got to win. You got to get points from at home. This is, an important match. You're starting to get healthy. And the season is starting to kind of dwindle on you a little bit. I mean, obviously there's tons of matches left. Let's not get it twisted. City have more than 20 league matches left. That is more than enough to even technically take the number 1 seed convincingly. Technically, that would never happen, I don't think, but technically. And the reason I say that is just that the season is not over, but the trajectory is looking very bad, and you have to right the ship at some point if you want to get to your final destination. You can't keep, swimming in the wrong direction. So, like Jake Plays just said, not effing good enough, period. And that's the best way to summarize it.
That is entirely the best way to summarize it. It's a 90-minute game. Playing 70 ain't gonna do much for you. You play 70, you're gonna lose a lot of games. You're not gonna be a playoff team, and that's their goal this year. And right now, they are not living up to it. This comes from Alex Booher, actually on the Twitter. He was involved over here on the YouTube, but I also see him getting involved on the Twitter, so I want to get this one out. He says, "I'm so tired of the quote-unquote we deserved more that comes out of this team every match. No. You didn't deserve more. You didn't put the ball in the net in the first half and made horrible mistakes that led to goals. If anything, San Diego deserved more. They hit the post 2 other times." Hard to argue with those points. There are a lot of people not very happy on the Instagram. In fact, Amy Bratton and other people bringing up the negative on City's Insta. People are calling for Olaf's head, the director's head, and to get rid of Yaro. People are pissed. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think you're always going to, when you have a new coach whose system isn't working, and this game, no one's going to be bothered. No one's going to care about the fact that the system from Olaf wasn't the issue tonight necessarily. The decisions might have been, but the system was not the issue. But when you combine the struggles there, the fact that people in this town are mad at the Cardinals, so therefore they're already ready to call City cheap. And I really do think those things are connected for some weird reason. And then players like Yaro, who is not a starter quality player in the MLS. And when you have a backup who can give you good moments and can give you good attributes in certain times, when you have to play him 90 minutes week after week after week after week after week, he's going to be exposed. And I think all of those points are well put. I don't think anybody needs to be fired. I think that is an early trigger, but I understand what this is coming from the fans.
Yeah, I completely agree. Listen, I'm never going to be on the Lutz out or the Olaf out train. I think it's very reactionary, but I understand the desire from the fans to just have some sort of fix-all. Like they just want some sort of easy solution. Oh, we'll fire the snowman and everything will magically be okay. That's not how it works. But general fans are going to want to think of some way that things could get fixed, and I get that. I do want to mention kind of your point about Yaro getting significant minutes, and this is a similar thing, not just with Yaro, but any depth player or any player that has a very specific weakness. It becomes, when they get more and more minutes, it becomes very easy to scout. And we saw San Diego FC with a very obvious press trigger, which was literally just anytime Yaro or Hebert had the ball at their feet, they were just sprinting directly at them, like just straight at them, just sprinting. And I thought it was kind of funny. And I actually thought Yaro and Hebert did a really decent job to manage that press trigger. But it was pretty funny. And it's obvious that teams are starting to catch on to ways that they can beat St. Louis, at their own game. And if St. Louis are going to continue to play with this Melberg system that is, again, not really the problem, like Rock said, it's got to be better. The quality has to be better. You have to get your best players healthy and have them on the pitch consistently. If you have Yaro and Hebert out there every single weekend, and every club knows that they can just run directly at them, and eventually they will get a dangerous turnover that could get them a free goal and just win them the game like that. You're not going to be favored at home. You're not going to win at home because teams are going to find ways to compete against that. And on the road, you're just going to get destroyed like 90% of the time. That's not a recipe for success.
Speaking of being favored at home, domesticated gamblers, our friends at Sports Hub STL tweeted me before the game, pointing out that City opened as a favorite, but then closed as the underdog. Yeah. Means the money does not like City. Jake Plays in on the chat. Thank you, everyone who joins us on the chat. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notifications button so you're always notified when we go live here after any St. Louis event, including St. Louis City SC. I'm all for quote-unquote trust in Lutz, but what is the plan? What are we looking forward to? This team doesn't have a forward direction. We're trending down. We've been trending down. I think getting players back like Jay Reed, re-involving players like Celio Pompeu, getting a new guy involved like Xande Silva, who showed a lot in a short time for a different MLS team, getting those kind of players, those young players with talent, and combining them with veterans who have shown that they can compete at a high level in the MLS. XiaoClaus, Marcel Hartel, Cedric Toyshirt, Edward Leuven when he finally is able to play consistently. Those players, we know that either one, they're on the up, or two, they can be at worst above average MLS players. And so I think the plan was to fix the defense, get a coach who can work with that, and let the talented offensive players work. The problem there is that a lot of the talented offensive players have been hurt, and you have some really talented, and a couple of the really talented defensive players have been hurt, which means you've had to take away from the offense to make sure that the defense being shored up, which was one of your biggest goals this year, continues to happen. And I think that's what we've seen the entire year. And I know people hate hearing the injuries thing. It's a fact. And I know people don't like it. And yes, you can criticize that the depth isn't good enough. That's a fair enough criticism when a team is hurt this much. My argument would be, how many teams in the MLS have multiple positions where they can play a backup 6-7 weeks in a row and not see a drop off? I think the list would be
because
very
of salary restrictions. There's literally none.
I think there's a couple that are probably built really well and have some good young players that can step in, but the list is probably 1, 2, or 3. And so I know people don't like hearing it, but it is a factor. And we saw it tonight. It was a factor because they made changes that were pushed by fatigue, and that fatigue has been pushed by the fact that players weren't available on Wednesday, and they desperately needed to win. And they desperately needed to win because they were losing the other games. They were losing the other games because the other players are injured. It's a vicious, vicious cycle that City is mired in right now. And the biggest problem is that it looked like through 70 minutes tonight that they might be able to shake themselves loose of that cycle. And unfortunately, they fell right back into the depths of it.
Yeah, and listen, that's a really hard thing when you're on a team, when you go into that locker room after everybody's heads down. Like, that's tough. You have to imagine the locker room is going to be spicy. I'm sure, obviously, Melberg's not going to be happy. None of the players are going to be happy. It's a frustrating time for the team. So you hope that things can change. It all comes down to the will to succeed.
No doubt about that. I want to tell everybody about one of our great sponsors here, that's Hot Shots, who are celebrating 35 years of Hot Shots, because that's what you do when you're an incredible company, providing an incredible service and incredible experience for everyone. You last for 35 years. Sports Hub STL post-game shows just like this one are brought to you in part by Hot Shots, and they invite you to come out to their St. Charles location on Sunday, June 1st to celebrate their 35th anniversary. The fun starts at noon with a parking lot party featuring the Budweiser Clydesdales. I went Boston there. Prizes will be given away all day. There's a dart tournament at noon, a bags tournament too, plus a chance to win Hot Shots tacos for a year just by eating a bunch of Hot Shots tacos. Congratulations to Hot Shots on 35 years. Hot Shots, St. Louis is home for all the games, all the time since 1990. Find yours at hotshotsnet.com. I hear chuckling. Do we get a good comment here?
Yes, yeah, we did. I just thought that was particularly funny.
If you're still a City fan for all this, you saw right there, they're going to have City SC bartenders. So meet some of the players. Maybe don't say things like that to them. Your call though. That's all on you. It was a rough one again tonight, Will. But City now has to turn the page because the fixture congestion is a real thing. They won their round of 32, so they got a round of 16 coming up in the U.S. Open Cup. So now coming up in 4 days at home, so you don't got to travel. That's good. They host Sporting Kansas City for the Barbecue, if you want to call it that. That's going to be a big one. Obviously, they got embarrassed in Kansas City this year. They need to win this one. Then it's a quick turnaround from there. 3 days later, they will travel to Minnesota for an MLS match. Then they will be back in Minnesota 4 days later.
In Minnesota?
Yeah, they'll come back. We got to do a little media. They got to talk to us. Come on now. We're very important. 4 days later, I'm kidding. 4 days later, they will send back to Minnesota to face off against the MUFC for the U.S. Open Cup round of 16. And then 3 days later, again, On the road in Colorado, they face off against the Rapids, and then they finally get a full week after that. So 4 games in the next 2 weeks. It's going to be extremely tough. Hopefully players like Jake Girdwood-Reich, hopefully Edward Leuven, Joachim Nielsen, Tomas Totland, Roman Berkey we know is going to be back, probably against Sporting Kansas City. So just hopefully these bodies are back. Hopefully no other dumb injuries, and you know that's not going to happen. So I don't know, prepare for one more dumb injury.
Yeah. Sorry, I saw another comment that gave me a good chuckle, which is right after Chad City Tactics. But
Interesting.
Yeah, he does say, fact of the night, said he has a 27% win percentage under Diego Gigliani's leadership, and that is a pretty sad.
Listen, I'm not trying to short Diego on this one, but that's like pointing out what the Cardinals' leadership is since Bill DeWitt III had a bigger role. Like he's not making decisions on the field. Like I just, you're not wrong though. Hey, a fact's a fact, and I like that. I like a fact. Good for you, CCT. I always love a fact.
I did want to take a quick meander back to Jake Play's Trustin Lutz comment earlier when he mentioned what are we looking towards? What is the plan? Obviously, Melberg has his plan of what he's doing with his roster and blah, blah, blah. But what is Lutz going to do to change the roster? And I wanted to talk about that a little bit and some of the options that City has going into the summer transfer window, which opens up on July 24th, I want to say.
Wait, guys, come on. Will's got to bring out his pocket protector. He's got to bring out his calculator. He's got to push his glasses up his face.
Listen,
we're doing roster profile nerd stuff. Let's do it.
I've got my City cheat sheet right here on my other monitor. We've got all the salaries.
Hold on a second. No. You're not letting me get this away. You're in a college dorm and you have an acoustic guitar. The most cliche thing in the entire work is he's got multiple acoustic guitars. Stay away from Belushi. Oh Jesus, a college kid with a guitar. I mean, I've seen it all now. Sorry, get to your nerdy stats. Get to your nerdy money stuff.
I'm not in a dorm though. I am in an apartment. I will say that.
Fair enough.
Anyway,
fair enough.
Anyway, let's look at what Lutz is wanting to do here. St. Louis has 2 supplemental roster slots open. One of them, they can sign a player with a salary similar to Kyle Hebert, Simon Betcher, Celio Pompeu before he got his pay raise. That's a really, really valuable position where you get a player that can turn into a really good player, right? You get a quote-unquote depth piece who could end up being a significant contributor like a Celio Pompeu, his kind of trajectory. Then you also have another supplemental roster slot, which I have an inkling might just go right to Mekhi Joyner. I think he might slide into that supplemental roster slot if he can play wingback, which he's been every time he's been called up. Obviously, he didn't feature tonight, even though he was called up, but I think it makes sense. Obviously, getting another homegrown is very helpful dealing with cap restrictions. Let me push up my glasses when I talk about cap restrictions and all of that. But obviously, that's a whole mess. MLS has all sorts of weird rules. But one thing that City can do is offload one player, and there are numerous that make sense to me.
They got to open a roster spot. That is honestly, I think, more so than spending the GAM money to get a new player, Lutz has to make a decision on how to open up a roster spot.
And that's the hardest thing to do because you have to find a team that will take a loan or you have to find a team that will buy your player for a price that you're okay with releasing them for. Obviously, you're not going to buy a player out. There's no one on this roster that makes sense to buy out. No one has a contract that would really benefit St. Louis City SC to buy out unless they had some, marvelous amount of pocket change and they really wanted to screw over who would become a former player. And it doesn't make any sense. They're not going to buy anybody out. But what they can do is switch from the U22 model back to the designated player model when the summer window opens. When they do that, they'll have to pay the MLS a little bit of their GAM back. So they have just under $2 million in GAM right now, but they'll have to pay a couple $100,000 back to the league if they switch back to the DP model. And the reason that's important is because it limits how much GAM they can spend on filling those supplemental spots, but it does open up the ability for them to sign a third designated player, which will not hit the salary cap under at all. Pretty much, they can, if they, let's say they get rid of, I'm just going to use an example, Rasmus Alm, because the reason I'm using Alm as an example is because Alm is an international slot player. So if they find a suitable, team that wants to buy Rasmus Alm, They get that transfer done. Then they switch to the DP model. Then they can sign some big name DP, like, you know, your Josh Sargent or whatever dream you want to come up with. They sign some kind of DP, ideally someone that will have a significant impact on this team. And they have the international slot to do it. They'd have the roster slot to do it. They'd have the DP slot to do it. All they'd have to do is pay the money and obviously find the player, and that's the hardest part. So there is a lot to look forward to, and I think Lutz definitely has a plan. I'm sure they have a long list of names that they're already in. They've been in talks with agents, I'm sure, for months already at this point. It doesn't make sense that they wouldn't, because they always are.
They're doing that.
So right, that is their job. So obviously getting a U22 could be nice if you're able to, but in my opinion, filling up that third DP slot makes a lot of sense. Maybe giving Mekhi Joyner a homegrown contract at minimum salary that won't affect your salary cap at all. And then you sign a Kyle Hebert, Simon Betcher, Celio Pompeu, like player, Alfredo Morales, someone in that salary kind of range.
I think some of you have to keep it live too. If they switch back to the DP, is it because they're re-upping Roman Berkey on a contract extension? And does that put him back into the DP tier for St. Louis City? I think that
is a big conversation.
Yeah, I think that's live going forward.
Yeah, obviously Roman Berkey is in a contract year with no club options.
Yep.
And
So,
they've bought down his designated player contract, but when it expires at the end of 2025, then what? You no longer have Roman Berkey unless you give him a new one. And if you don't give him a DP contract, he's probably taking a pay cut. And
as people know, when you get under 6 months in your contract, that's where everything opens up. Agents can talk to you, teams can talk to you. And so he's hitting that 6 month thing this summer. I think it's live that we maybe see them try to re-up with him. And considering he was at a DP level before, and he played MVP level since then and won all the awards, I don't see him re-upping at anything below DP level. So maybe that's where we get it. But all in all, those are July questions, and those are July problems for Lutz and company. The next 14 days, they have 4 games, and all of them are huge. Can they continue to move on in the most historic and important tournament here in St. Louis soccer, in the U.S. Open Cup against Minnesota United? Can they walk away with 3 points in any of the other 3 MLS games? Must-wins coming up. No doubt about that, especially against Kansas City on Wednesday. Do you have an early prediction for that match, Will Bratton? We'll close it out with that.
I mean, listen, St. Louis City SC are not happy. They've been not getting good results. They come out of a 70-minute good performance and then 20 minutes to blow it. That is a team that is going to go one of 2 directions. They're going to blow out Kansas City at home, or they are going to get embarrassed, and the season is going to be an absolute shambles from that point on until the summer transfer window, at which point it'll probably be irrecoverable. So it's going to be polar. I don't think we see any kind of a boring match. I think it's going to be fireworks. I think City are going to get completely embarrassed, or they're going to completely destroy Kansas City. I like to be an optimist. I'm going to bet on St. Louis. I'm going with a 4-1, reliving kind of the 2023 vibe and trying to get this team back together. I'm going with Silva's first goal with St. Louis City. I think Klaus is going to get one, and the other 2, honestly, you could just throw in Kyle Hebert, because apparently he's a magic man. So we'll just let Kyle Hebert get the other 2 somehow. Obviously, that's not good.
All right, I'm going to go with
City to win.
I'm going with a 1-1 draw on Wednesday. Sorry about you, everybody. I don't have a lot of confidence in this team being able to play a full 90. That will close us out here on the City Hub postgame. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That's Will Bratton. Thank you so much for joining us today on YouTube. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notifications button on Sports Hub STL. Make sure to follow us on X and on Instagram. On X, you can find me at ROCC STL. Where can they find you, Will?
Will Bratton STL on X and STL City SC Views on Instagram.
Next time City plays, they will be facing off against Sporting KC for a midweek match. You'll be able to find us right here on Sports Hub STL for a City Hub postgame right at the end. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we will talk to you on Wednesday night.